In this video, I will show how to pass data between views. This is useful when you have one view open and want to open another one and pass along some data for that second view. Maybe in the first view you have selected one employee from a list and you want to switch to an edit view. That second view needs to know which employee was selected. Most of this can actually be handled by just passing along a string, so that's where we will start. Sometimes, however, you might need to pass along an entire object, but honestly I think this is very rarely required. Still, I will show this too. In my super simple example, I will have two views. The first is shown here. There is a second view which will display some text in a label. That text is provided by the first view. I can type in some text here and navigate to the second view, which now displays the text. I have once again prepared some code so I don't have to reiterate what I have shown in previous videos. Instead, we can focus on the topic at hand. Currently I have two views and I can swap back and forth, but the data is not transferred from one to the other. The first step would be to update the ViewManager. But before that, I want to append something to my previous video. In that one, my approach was to swap out scenes. I have since learned that it may be better to keep a single scene and swap out the content of that scene. This is because various actions, stylings, sizing and so on may be attached to the scene object, and creating a new scene and redoing all these action stylings and so on can become a bit cumbersome. So generally it is recommended that you swap out the root of the scene instead. And in the start method I create the new scene with a temporary dummy anchor pane. I could have used whatever pane here, but the scene requires something. The two arguments are width and height of the scene. Okay, now the idea is to overload the existing show method in the ViewManager, which accepts the view to show and some secondary data. I want to set this argument on that controller class for the display, but where do I get the controller from? Well, the fxml loader has a different way of using it, where we create an instance of it instead of using the static method. It looks like this. I create a new instance. Then I set the location of the fxml file to be loaded. Then I load the fxml file. And once again, the load method may throw an exception, so I need to handle that. I will just do the same as above. Show a pop-up in case of the view not being found. The load method returns my parent object like before. And then the next step, I can extract the controller class that was just created for this particular view like this. Given that the controller method is pretty general, it just returns an object. I can then cast the controller variable to be a specific controller type. Then I can add a set method on the controller class so I can pass in the data. But what type is my controller? What do I cast it to? Well, in my super simple example here, I know the type is going to be display view controller. But in larger applications, I may have different controllers requiring some string argument. Therefore, I need an approach which can work for all future controllers. I need to be able to indicate and ensure that a given controller has a method to set a string argument. I need an interface. And let me just create that. It's going to contain a single method, set argument, which takes a string. And let me just implement this interface in the display view controller. And what does the method do? It puts the string into the label. Great. Back to the ViewManager. Now I know the controller variable is not only of type object, it is also of type accept string argument. That was my interface. I am doing a cast here from object to my interface, and that can potentially fail, but that should never happen when my user uses the program. So I'm just going to believe the casting is okay. Then I can pass along the string argument here. And finally update the view. Next I need to update the input controller so that it actually passes on that text from the text field. I just add a second parameter here. And that should be all. Let's give it a try. And that seems to work. Now let's do the last part where we can pass along an object to the other class. I will again create an interface for this with the method. And because I don't actually know what the type of the object is, it could be anything, employee, person, car, whatever, I have to be a bit general here. Now let's overload the existing ViewManager method once again. It will be very similar to the method above, just with an object argument instead of a string. So let me just duplicate it. And then let me change the argument type. And then the main difference is what type the controller is. This time it is the accepts object argument interface. Let me try this out with the display controller. Implementing the method. And here I would cast the argument to whatever specific object I expect. I will just exemplify here and leave the rest up to the viewer. I trust you can finish this. This object is then of course created by the input view controller, for example, and sent along. I believe I have now shown you enough to do this in your own app and do whatever adjustments you need. So I will stop here. Thanks for watching.